right, guys, here's what we've got today. Let's take a look at this car. This is a 2003 Hyundai Sonata. Hey, I pronounced it correctly. Hyundai Sonata, as in Sonata good car. Because this car has some issues. Let's talk about what happened here real quick. All right, make sure I don't cover the title of our new book in the background there. So again, Dr. Raymond Kamar, one of my viewers, has written a book based on the material from this channel and my paid channel. I've noticed a lot of you guys who are members of my paid channel for only $3.49 a month have not yet downloaded this book. This is the final version of the book. This is free to all people with a subscription to Schrodinger's Box Quantum Mechanics. I will put a link in the video description here. But if you are a member of that website and you have not downloaded this book, there is no reason for that because it is free with your subscription. So I will put a link to that. I will also put a link to the video explaining the book and how you can get the book. But maybe we'll be using it in this car because this car's got some problems. So this is going to be a little bit of a charity thing. The very, very young lady, like 20 years old, who owns this car is, I'm not sure what her personal situation is, but it's not very good. She didn't go into a lot of detail, but apparently she is no longer able to live at home with her parents. It is definitely not a thing, I can assure you, where she is some kind of like out of control teenager kind of thing. It seems quite the opposite. It sounds like her parents are the ones that have an issue. She works, she goes to church. She actually was on her way to a charity event at her church when she started developing these car problems. She says for about a week, the car has lost power very bad. And then soon after that, she described the car as sounding like a helicopter. And so the car has no power, sounds like a helicopter. She says halfway over to my house, smoke started pouring out of the car. And of course, I'm putting together, well, if it sounds like a helicopter, it's probably a misfire, probably loss in compression of the cylinder because it overheated. Now you got smoke coming out of the car, so it's surely an overheat. Well, it turns out she described it as black smoke coming from the engine, and it has a burning smell. I can tell you in pulling the car into my garage, because she ended up, I told her to pull over immediately, have the car towed. Let's not take any chances of doing any more destruction than what may have already been done. But we definitely don't want the car to catch on fire. I can tell you in pulling the car in, it has no power at all. It is clearly running on 2 cylinders. Also, maybe possibly some type of exhaust clog because it really, really lacks power. And also the sound of the helicopter is an exhaust leak, I can tell. The other thing is that it absolutely does smell like burning rubber. Something in this engine has caught fire or something. So that's where we're at. That is all I know. So the first thing we are going to do is I want to make sure there is no chance if we run this engine that I'm going to burn my house down. So I need to find where the source is of whatever is burning in here and make sure that we address that before anything else. All right, I am, of course, fearing the worst. This young girl, oh man, it smells absolutely like burning rubber. And also look here, don't know if you can see it, but there is just ash everywhere in this engine compartment. There has been something burning for sure. But what I was going to say is this poor girl has no money. She can definitely not afford a major repair or another car. Unfortunately, I'm kind of thinking possibly the worst here, but we need to find out where this fire is. We do have a check engine light on, so once we secure that we're not going to catch my house on fire, I think we'll look at the check engine light next, most likely. The young lady says that for the last couple times, a neighbor, or maybe it was her brother, has looked at the car and they've done some things to it. So I don't know if maybe they did something and moved something on an exhaust manifold or whatever. Who knows what we've got here. Usually more complicating when somebody else has been in here first. Oh man, alternator's just covered in soot. Wow, it stinks, man. Oh, there it is, right there. Right there. The boot for the axle, like the CV axle, the boot is completely burned. So there's going to be some kind of exhaust issue or something. Except for the fact this is the intake manifold. This is a 4-cylinder engine. So we've got exhaust manifold over here, directly opposite the boot. So I'm not quite sure. Oh, there's an exhaust pipe that runs right underneath the boot. Okay, let's get you a look here. It's going to be easier to see this from under the car, actually. All right, so this is going to be one problem, but not the problem. What we've got is this component here, this flex pipe, has an exhaust leak on it for sure. What's happening is that hot exhaust has melted the boot. You can just see it maybe crumbling right there, and it's just completely burned up the boot. So we've got an exhaust leak here. One of the things I'm thinking, we've got catalytic converter up here. So maybe we've got a clogged muffler or something, but maybe we've also got, because of the really low power, aside from what is obviously a misfire, and it's more than one cylinder misfire, we may also have a plugged exhaust or something. So we're gonna, no pun intended, put that on the back burner. And let's go ahead and get some check engine light data. And now that I see what's happening here, I'm not really afraid of the car catching on fire anymore. So we can go ahead and give you a listen to the car too. Yep, sounds like a helicopter. You can see the engine vibration. This is a multiple cylinder misfire, consistent for sure. Sounds kind of like a lawnmower. Wow, it stinks in here. Let me turn that off. Okay, we've got solid check engine light on. I would expect it to be flashing with those misfires like that. But one of the things is that now, just running it that little bit, there is a very, very, very strong exhaust smell. Heavy, rich exhaust smell in the garage right now. So it does look like we've at least got fuel. We'll need to diagnose that misfire. The black smoke we've explained. One of the things I want to do is that it could be that still we have a very serious engine failure. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do an audible compression test just to rule out if we're wasting our time here, because if we've got something like blown cylinder head gasket or something, loss of compression, then quite honestly, there's nothing we're going to be able to do to help this girl out. I'm going to not charge labor on this one. Any parts that she needs will be up to her, but she's not going to be able to afford an engine. So let's try that real quick. So I think what I'm going to do is try a clear flood mode by holding the gas pedal down and cranking the engine and see if we can get it to crank and not start. We'll take a listen to the compression. Okay, so a lot of cars, they will have a feature that if you hold the gas pedal all the way down while cranking, the engine will crank but not start. This car does not have that feature. A lot of cars don't. So what I'm going to do is look here in the fuse box, see if we can disable fuel or spark. Let's see. Oh, there's ignition coil, 20 amp right there. Right here. Oh, there's a little clip for the fuse. How handy is that? All right, so this should disable the ignition coils. And now we can do our crank test and take a listen. All right, very surprising there actually. I was expecting, honestly, not even to be filming this, because if we had low compression, we've got so many videos on that, it wouldn't even be worth doing. And of course, I'm not going to fix this car in that case. But based on that, I'm going to say that we do not have a serious engine issue. But it definitely, this car will not even drive. I don't even know how she got it here, because it barely made it up my driveway into the garage, honestly. So I think what we want to do now, given the fact that we Figured out the fire issue here, and that's not really a concern. We just need to fix that exhaust leak. I think what we're going to do is go and do our diagnostics as typical now on the check engine light and see if we can diagnose this obvious misfire issue. Okay, I've replaced that fuse because I believe that that fuse also powers the ECM. We're going to need that to get our codes here. So let's see what we get. Oh man, that's a lot of codes. That is a lot of codes. Okay, so some of these are duplicates because we've got the pending and active codes. We talk about those in the book actually. Really, all right, so let's see. Throttle position sensor signal input low. That for sure could explain the extreme low power, because even if you floor this car, it really doesn't seem to respond very much. So we may not have throttle position sensing, O2 sensor heater circuit, a pending code on. Now, one of the other things to keep in mind is that at least one other person looked at this before I did. So they may have been unplugging stuff, and I have no idea what all they did. So we need to keep that in mind too. Cylinder 1 injector circuit open. Okay, so that's a little bit concerning, because if we don't have fuel injector and we also have 2-cylinder misfire, this may indicate that maybe something did get burned up. This is a little bit of a problem because one of the things that I'll typically do, we've got cylinder 2 and 3 misfire. Those are going to be adjacent cylinders. Typically, I may worry a little bit more about that with a compression problem between the cylinders, for example. But I don't think we have a compression problem based on our earlier test. But we do have a 2-cylinder misfire, which I absolutely can feel. We also have here an ignition coil, secondary circuit, NOx sensor, catalyst system below efficiency. That may be related with the plugged cat possibly too. And then an evap system that I'm absolutely not worried about. Again, we're not going to be able to fix everything. We just got to get this car drivable for this girl so she can get to work and build up enough money to fix this properly. She's also going to need that axle replaced, probably a catalytic converter, I'm guessing. This is going to be a problem. So we need to do what we can here. One of the strategies that I'll typically do on something like this, especially if I'm not sure if these are caused by whoever worked on the car before me, is I will just clear all the codes and then see what comes back after driving the car for a little bit. The only problem is I really can't drive this car. It doesn't really drive anyway, and I really don't want to have that exhaust leak possibly cause any more damage. So we will actually be able to just rule some of this out. The first thing I want to rule out is the throttle position sensor. So let's get out of here. Let's go to live data. Right now the engine is fairly cool, and I'm not going to warm it up because I'm expecting some exhaust issues and I don't want a hot exhaust. See if we got any misfire. Oh, is that it? Is that all we have? This must be in generic mode maybe. Map sensor would be helpful for a exhaust backup, except for the fact that we've got a pretty significant leak you can hear. So we may not actually build up map pressure from an exhaust. Well, this is not a lot to go on here. I'm pretty sure that I specified for this car, but one of the other things I know, these Hyundais, especially these older ones, the computer systems on those are so slow. We'll probably see really slow refresh rates, and also compatibility is often an issue. Let's just go with this and let's see if we've got throttle position change. All right, so we've got throttle position there. And yeah, actually it does respond to throttle. Yeah, let me graph this. Sorry for the camera work here. Yeah, we can see that it does have proportionate response. So this may be something that the previous person did. Yeah, that's a smooth, boy, the refresh rate is super slow on this. But it does seem the throttle position works, so maybe they did something. I don't know, man. Okay, so the other thing we need to do is check the misfires. Let's go do that. Well, this is where a book for only $3.49 might come in handy, but ignition systems should be section 5.6. That's page 95. So we can go right here to ignition systems. We can click on any of these links that will take you to videos that train you on ignition systems. And we can look at all the diagnostics and troubleshooting that we would do on ignition systems. So how helpful is that? All right, so looking at this ignition system, it makes sense now. We are probably going to have a bad ignition coil because we recognize this as a waste spark system from our training in the book. And cylinder number 2 and 3 are controlled by the same ignition coil. So if I disconnect this coil, I will bet you this car runs exactly the same. Yes, it does. All right, so we can see there's no contribution from that coil. Plug it in, unplug it, no difference. If I disconnect this ignition coil, which runs 1 and 4, the car will die, and it does. Okay, so is this a bad ignition coil, or do we have a wiring problem here? Or is it possible that there is nothing with the ignition coil and maybe this is a fuel problem or probably not a compression problem? It's going to be a bad ignition coil, but we need to be 100% on that. So we can do this one of a couple ways. We could very easily use the book training to diagnose our inputs for the ignition coil, check for signals, stuff like that. Or what I'm going to do is going to be a little bit longer of a way, but what I'm going to do is just swap these ignition coils. Here's the question: why is it quicker for me to swap the ignition coils than it is just to do very basic, simple electrical testing? Think about that. Why do I want to do the ignition coil swap? All right, the reason is because it's going to allow me to also simultaneously help diagnose that fuel injector code that we had earlier. Because if we're missing a fuel injector also, then that will become more apparent here. So what we need to do is swap these coils out, and then if the engine runs exactly the same way, then we confirm that we have a bad ignition coil and that we also don't have an issue with the fuel injector, and most likely the fuel injector was something that maybe the previous guy dealt with that or something. I'm not quite sure what he did. So let's confirm this bad coil. And first of all, I'm going to actually just easily confirm this bad ignition coil by removing that. Plug this coil in here. We're not going to have spark at this coil right there. All right, it's a very bad idea to run the car a long time with a bad coil, because we saw a previous video where doing so caused a PCM to blow. It blew a driver as a result of a shorted coil. So we definitely want to get this figured out. Oh, there goes my test light. Okay, so we're going to put test light here. You can see there's no spark from that coil. We're going to go ahead and swap these coils out. The engine's going to run the exact same way. However, now we're going to have the misfire on 1 and 4. All right. Get this. I noticed there is a white paint mark on this coil. I'm going to say that was from the previous guy. There's some kind of white label on there or something with paint to identify that coil, I believe. All right, swap the coils. We are now going to be running from 2 and 3, not 1 and 4 now, because we got the bad coil running 1 and 4. Car's going to still run on 2 cylinders, I bet. Let's try it. Exactly the same. So now if I disconnect 1 and 4, no change. Running on 2 cylinders here. Engine dies, bad ignition coil, that is confirmed. So we need ignition coil. As you know, with an ignition coil, we also want to replace the plugs and the wires because most likely wear in the plugs and wires, high resistance, cause the coil to fail. The only thing I'm worried about, it does look like this girl's actually going to get away on a big break here. The only thing I'm worried about would be clogged exhaust. So we need to rule that out because we have to put together what we would do if this car has a clogged exhaust and how I would do something to circumvent that until she can get money to get it fixed properly. So let's go ahead and focus on that now. All right, if we look right here, we've got a pre-cat oxygen sensor. So if we have a clogged catalytic converter, we are definitely going to have some back pressure there. So what I'm going to do, let's disconnect this oxygen sensor. And somebody's already disconnected, maybe even replace this O2 sensor because the O2 sensor connector is not secured in its bracket right there. And also the tab is broken off as well. I'm going to need a screwdriver. Sorry, radiator hose is right in your way. It doesn't matter. I'm just disconnecting the O2 sensor. Not a big deal here. All right. And we're going to remove that O2 sensor. Okay, and this O2 sensor is coming out really easy, which tells me most likely somebody has replaced this already. Probably trying to fix it with an O2 sensor because of the O2 sensor code or whatever. Look how sooty that relatively new O2 sensor already is. So obviously it didn't fix the issue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a gizmo here. And this is just a little homemade device that I've made. The pipe here I just got from Home Depot. And this just threads right into where an oxygen sensor would thread into. And of course the heat shield is in my way. All right, now we can thread in my little homemade adapter. And we're going to connect up something you will very rarely see me use on this channel. And what we're going to use here is something you will very rarely see on this channel, and that is a good old vacuum gauge. And the reason we don't use it on this channel is because on modern cars, there are very limited applications. As a matter of fact, even on older cars, everybody used to use these and still misdiagnose their car. Oh, you got a valve problem. I can tell from the vacuum gauge. People would interpret these vacuum gauges and still fire the parts cannon all the same. But this time it's going to be definitive because we're going to use it as a pressure gauge. If we measure any pressure on this exhaust, then this catalytic converter is clogged or something is clogged beyond the catalytic converter, a muffler or something, but that would be less apparent because of the leak that we have, the rather significant exhaust leak after the catalytic converter. So let's see if we can set this up here. It's probably going to fall with the engine vibration, but we should have no back pressure here essentially. All right, and granted, this is maybe a little bit of an unfair test because of only running on 2 cylinders, but it should still build up pressure pretty quick if we've got a clogged cat. There we go. And looks like we've got no back pressure. Well, that's a good sign because if there's no back pressure here, then there's no back pressure anywhere in the exhaust. Now, of course, if we fix that exhaust leak, we may build some up. But at least the catalytic converter isn't clogged. That's a huge relief that the catalytic converter isn't clogged because that would be an expensive problem. Let's add some RPM. All right, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Wow, that engine is smelly. Okay, well, I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously, we've shown the catalytic converter is not clogged. Even with the exhaust leak, we're testing ahead of the catalytic converter. So a clogged cat would have displayed here. It did not. So if we've got like a muffler issue or something, that's something that I can deal with to get this girl by. All right, well, I think this girl's gonna dodge a bullet here, and hopefully she takes advantage of that. Didn't have to spend a lot of money getting this car fixed, and she will invest in some more preventative stuff before it becomes really expensive. So get that oxygen sensor back in. I've got a new ignition coil. Let's see, new ignition coil we now need to run on 1 and 4. Let me go get that. Okay, also got some plugs and a couple wires here. Kind of funny, the guy at the parts store was all concerned because of the only 2 spark plug wires. And I tried to explain to him what a waste spark system is, but I don't think it quite sunk in. But let's see here. All right, we'll do the plugs and wires in just a bit. I just want to see that this works and what the car sounds like with the exhaust leak. And then I may repeat that pressure test on the exhaust. But this should restore power to the vehicle unless we have some other issues like with that throttle position sensor. I don't think we're going to have a fuel injector issue, but we just want to rule out that the engine at least runs smooth after this. And what we'll do is just use some exhaust tape to temporarily fix that exhaust leak. And then hopefully she gets some money and we can fix that axle and whatever else this car may need. Okay, this car should run a lot better now. Let's make sure O2 sensor's connected. It is. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, wow. All right, engine runs great. Can absolutely hear that exhaust leak. All right, let's patch up that exhaust leak and then make sure we don't have any back pressure. All right, hopefully this will last for a little bit. This is just some, it's called Venture tape. It's kind of like an aluminum tape. Should be very heat resistant, but I also wanted to show you this. We got another mystery solved here. If you remember, there was a knock sensor code. And if we look right up here, we've got another casualty. We can see that burned up wiring right there is actually on the knock sensor right there. So we need to fix the wiring on the knock sensor and probably also replace that knock sensor as well. So looks like most of those codes were legitimate, except for looking around for any other damaged stuff, and I don't see it. Clearly that fuel injector code was nothing to worry about. Oh, look here. This intake manifold has been replaced before. There's bolts missing from the intake manifold support. These cars where other people have been here before. Always amazes me what people leave behind. Anyway, let's get this muffler repair finished and let's see what the car sounds like. All right, let's go ahead and give this a try. Hopefully the helicopter noise is gone. Oh, wow. How about that? Beautiful. Sounds like a regular car. I can already tell there's no back pressure issue. Yeah, this car's fixed. This girl caught a break. All right, that makes me happy. You know what? I'm not going to get paid for this. Well, I will through the YouTube video, and hopefully if we get a few extra book sales too. But I just feel good helping this girl out. I hope she gets on her feet. This becomes a dangerous trap. I've been there myself. I usually made pretty good decisions, but I've been in dire financial condition for more than half my life, actually. And what I can tell you is there is a cultural aspect to this where for a lot of people, they catch this break. But because they caught the brake, now they figure, oh, good, I won't worry about this. They don't do the preventative stuff. They won't fix that exhaust leak. They don't fix the axle. Now the axle starts to bind up. That causes other issue down the line. And now instead of like a few $100 repair, because a lot of people in bad financial situation, they delay this, but they still may get their nails done or whatever. And now this becomes thousands of dollars. And then they look at it and go, I just can't catch a break. Everybody's against me. It must be those rich corporations oppressing me. And no, it's actually the decisions that you make that more often than not dictate that quality of life you're living. It becomes a culture, actually. I have been there, so I can speak to this. You have to make decisions for the future, and that's where a lot of people fail. I really hope that this girl takes advantage of this, get that exhaust fixed so that the leak doesn't burn up other things. We get the driveline fixed, get that knock sensor fixed. Yeah, it costs a little bit of money, but not as much as it would if this is ignored. And then hopefully she goes, passes emissions. She doesn't have this problem where she can't get to work because the car fails, loses her job, the whole world's against me. That's how it works. I'm telling you, I know this. So hopefully she takes advantage of this. All right, guys, we are going to have another video because we've got this over here. As you can see, we've got our first snowstorm already in October. Love Denver. But we got a check engine light on this car. It is actually a Honda CR-V, I believe. And then we've got a Prius over here. Not quite sure what we're doing with that one yet. We'll figure it out. So hopefully we'll get a couple more videos for you within the week. And also, of course, if you are a subscriber to my paid channel content, you must download the book. It is free with your subscription. So make sure you do that. The paid channel, that's where all my best videos are to teach you how to do the stuff that you saw in this video today. All right, thanks for watching. We will see you again, hopefully this same weekend with another video.